Early 1976, Rhodesia. You are seconds from the drop, and Fireforce is living on silence. The K-Car is meant to start the fight on purpose, on timing, with the 20mm setting the rhythm for everything that follows. Then a passenger breaks the one rule that keeps the machine clean and fires from the aircraft. Instantly, surprise dies, the target scatters, and the pilot is no longer running an assault. He's doing damage control. And here is the detail that makes pilots see red. Loose brass and debris can get sucked rearwards toward the tail rotor. So one bad burst is you picking a fight with your own helicopter. Set the board. Side A is Rhodesian security forces trying to hit small insurgent groups fast before they can melt away. Side B is the guerrilla fighter who survives by moving, hiding, and slipping across borders when pressure rises. In this war, that often means ZANLA or ZIPRA units. The battlefield is not a front line. It is bush farms, river lines, and dirt roads, with safe areas across borders where fighters can regroup. And why it matters to the world. This is late Cold War Southern Africa, where local fights pull in politics, training, sanctions, and outside attention. Now here is the big number that matters for this story. Fireforce is built around speed. A whole operation can be decided in minutes, not days. Fireforce is a system, a moving trap. At its core, it is a helicopter package, sometimes later in the war reinforced by paratroops from a Dakota. A call-out starts with a sighting, a radio report, and the siren. On the ground, the land tail rolls out too. Fuel, ammo, medevac, and command support to keep the cycle alive. In a small call-out, 2 G-cars can drop 2 sticks of 4 men each, and a K-car is added to control the fight. That is a reduced package. The textbook first wave is bigger. In the standard package described in many summaries, the first wave is 32 soldiers. 3 G-cars carry, stops 1 to 3 to block escape routes, 3 4-man sticks for 12 men, and a Dakota carries 5 parasticks for 20 men, often used as extra stops or as the sweep line, with a K-car and a light strike aircraft, the Lynx, overhead. Stop groups are the cutoff teams. They sit on likely exits and wait. On paper, that is the standard package, but in real callouts, the Dakota or even the Lynx might be missing, depending on distance and availability. In practice, the package could be smaller or larger, depending on aircraft availability and distance. The strength is obvious: speed, control from the air, and a fast seal on escape routes. In Rhodesian service, the Alouette III came as the G-car troop carrier and the K-Car gunship, with the K-Car mounting a 20mm cannon. The K-Car is both gunship and command post. The Fireforce commander rides in it and directs the action from an orbit above the contact. The Achilles heel is also obvious: timing and discipline. And surprise is fragile anyway. An Alouette can be heard from kilometers away, so crews fight for every second of stealth. If the air package loses surprise, the enemy can break contact, scatter, or slip through gaps before the net closes. The sweep group is the line that pushes into the contact area, forcing movement onto the stop groups. Picture the scene. First light. Rotors chopping the air, dust and grass flattening under rotor wash. Radios clipped to webbing, the whole assault balanced on silence, seconds, and self-control. A call-out has a script. The K-Car talks on, initiates contact with the 2 0mm, and only then the G-Cars drop stop groups where the commander points. The Lynx comes in to punish movement once the net starts closing. Then comes a day when that control breaks. Here is the first step on the evidence staircase. Fireforce only works if everyone follows the same rules. Rule 1 is simple. You do not fire unless ordered, and you do not fire in a way that endangers the aircraft or the timing. In a call-out, the K-Car is the one meant to open fire and control the timing. But in one documented account, a passenger in the back opens up from the helicopter against orders. This detail comes from a published first-hand recollection, not a rumor. 2 technical details matter here. The aircraft is low, loud, and exposed. Once shots start, the ground responds. Fireforce relies on a clean sequence. The helicopters move, the stops are chosen, and the drop happens in the right order. When firing starts early, you force the entire package to to react instead of execute. Early fire doesn't just wake them up, it triggers the bombshell, meaning the group splits up and scatters in different directions before the stop groups are set. Immediate result: the operation loses its clean surprise. The contact wakes up, the ground changes posture, and the pilot has to make a decision right now. Cliffhanger. The next move is not attack, it is damage control. This did not destroy Fireforce, it killed the callout. Now raise the stakes. In a Fireforce callout, you are not just risking one helicopter, you are risking the entire timing chain. If the pilot continues, you may be flying into a mess you did not plan for, with fire coming back at the aircraft and troops about to be dropped into a hot, confused landing. If the pilot aborts, you might lose the whole window. The enemy runs, and the assault becomes a chase instead of a trap. This is where the entire Fireforce assault phrasing comes from. Not that the whole Fireforce system is destroyed, but that the assault for that moment is gone. The operation you planned is replaced by whatever the enemy allows you to do next. And there is a human consequence that is easy to miss. The soldiers in the back are now passengers in a bad decision. They did not vote for it, they just inherit it. Here is the point of no return. The exact decision is not a grand speech, it is a trigger pull. The moment that first burst leaves the helicopter, you cannot unring that bell. In that account, the pilot does not argue on the radio. He aborts, and in seconds, the whole call-out clock is bleeding out. The enemy knows, the aircrew knows, everyone on the net knows. So the pilot does what Fireforce forces pilots to do. Choose between safety, surprise, and mission success in the space of a breath. No way back. What happens next depends on the account, but the operational shape is consistent. The clean assault is compromised. 3 concrete results with numbers to make it real. 1. Fireforce is a timing machine. In the standard package, that first wave is 32 soldiers, 12 inches 3G cars, plus 20 inches the Dakota, with the K-Car and the Lynx shaping the fight. 2. Logistics is part of the weapon. Refueling, turnaround time, and keeping aircraft in the cycle determine how long you can keep the net tight. 3. Once surprise is gone, the mission flips. The same troops meant to seal routes become troops chasing movement through bush. And this is the core lesson. In Fireforce, speed is not just movement. Speed is schedule, and schedule is life. The cost is not just we missed them. It is fuel burned, hours lost, risk taken for nothing, and a louder enemy next time. It is also the quiet erosion of trust. Pilots need to trust passengers, and passengers need to trust pilots, because everyone is sharing one thin margin. What changed after years of this kind of thing is discipline culture. Fireforce units learned, sometimes the hard way, that the smallest breach of procedure can destroy the advantage that makes the whole concept work. The object symbol for this episode is simple: the safety catch. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. A tiny piece of metal that decides whether your plan stays silent or your plan becomes noise. And here's what stays open. How many legendary battlefield outcomes are really just one small rule followed, or one small rule broken? This is Africa War Files. If this breakdown changed the way you see air assault tactics, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. What is the smallest mistake you have seen that ruined a whole operation, even if the world never heard about it? We will not stop digging.